Hello, everyone. I'm Don Harkins. This is the Don Harkins Real Estate Show. This week, we're going to look at a unbelievable deregulation effort that's passing through the Florida House right now, Florida House of Representatives, to abolish the Florida Real Estate Commission. I'll tell you exactly what they do and why this is perhaps the worst idea regarding real estate that's ever been put forth in the Florida House, and it's actually making good headway. We're also going to talk about the whipsaw movement that we've seen in mortgages over the last 2 weeks, more volatility than we've seen really since COVID in terms of how much rates have swung one direction and then back in the other. I'll show you exactly where they're sitting today and what to look out for next week. And then finally, for our landlords, property managers, tenants out there, we're going to look at home improvement trends, what home buyers like to see, what homeowners like to see, the best place to invest your money if you're looking to attract a tenant or just add value to your home and spend your money as best as possible. So this is a Don Harkins Real Estate Show. I'm a mortgage broker and a real estate broker and a property manager operating in Central Florida on the Space Coast. We have a couple offices, and ultimately our goal here is to help both agents, real estate practitioners, lenders, property managers, and homeowners, home buyers, and sellers navigate the complex world of real estate, and especially to debunk myths and expose scams, which are becoming so prevalent. And speaking of debunking scams, that brings us to our first topic of conversation today, which is Florida's push to cut licensing oversight through abolishing the Florida Real Estate Commission. So what this is doing, guys, is it's essentially a deregulatory bill on its surface face value. And when we talk about FREC, we're talking about the Florida Real Estate Commission, and it plays a critical role in protecting licensees, but more importantly, in protecting consumers. I would say it offers the most protection to home buyers and tenants, but it also offers incredible protections to home sellers when they're dealing with real estate practitioners. And there's 7 people on this board, and these people are all appointed by the governor. It's a gubernatorial board, and there's a very specific breakdown for these people. So these are the chairs right here. We've got some people from Central Florida that are sitting on it right now, somebody from Winter Haven. They've been serving on it for a while. They're appointed to 4-year terms. And the breakdown is they have to have 4 people who are licensed, and they have to have held an active license for 5 years before they join the commission. 1 member must be a licensed associate who's held an active license for 2 years preceding, so somebody with a little bit less experience. 2 members who are not and have never been licensed, and at least 1 person who's over the age of 60. So the best part about this board is you have members of the public. And so you've got some attorneys who are not licensed, all kinds of different people appointed, but it's designed to give a fair and broad oversight committee to review specifically complaints and abuses. So when you look at the Department of Business Professional Regulation website here for Florida, it's really easy to file a complaint. You just click file a complaint, boom, online complaint form. You're off to the races, being able to go in and lodge that complaint, which will then be heard by FREC. They can do a reprimand, they can do suspension, revocation. But this is what they're enforcing. Chapter 475 of the Florida statutes. And the stuff that real estate licensees do it's hard to even exaggerate too much. Everything from going into a homeowner's home when they're out of town and moving in and leasing it out as an Airbnb for a week when they have it as a listing, to taking a buyer's earnest money deposit and just pocketing it and stealing it, to collecting deposits from tenants and stealing that money, leasing out their listings and disappearing with the proceeds, manufacturing and selling drugs out of listings, stealing personal property of homeowners. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. There's nothing almost you can imagine that a dishonest, unethical real estate licensee in the state of Florida has not done to take advantage of a homeowner or a consumer. And so what FREC does is it enforces all these regulations, everything from, what has to be in an office to who can be licensed, if you've had previous criminal history, to how to handle money when you receive it. There's a fund that FREC manages to make the public whole if they've been harmed financially by a real estate licensee's actions. They regulate the ongoing education and which courses can count towards continuing education. Just on and on and on and on and on, all kinds of stuff. It's critical. And so this bill is really making its way through. So House Bill 1461, introduced February 28th by Representative Taylor Yarkowski, a Republican representing Florida's 25th House District. It did not originally propose elimination of FREC, but a 389-page amendment filed April 7th added the controversial provision. According to Florida Realtors is essentially a property rights lobbying organization. They have the RPAC, Realtor Political Action Committee. So that's the political arm of the Florida Association of Realtors. But the Association of Realtors as a whole is essentially they're a regulatory body over realtor members. But what's important about FREC is FREC can revoke a license. And you have to differentiate here between licensees and realtors. So everybody who's a realtor is a licensee, but not everybody who's a licensee is a realtor. So once you get your Florida real estate license, you can then become a realtor by joining a local board, applying, getting approved, getting ethics training, agreeing to abide by a code of ethics, and then taking some orientation classes. And then you become a member of the trade organization. You get the designation realtor. So your licensees are kind of like your entry-level step. That's kind of the bare minimum. And then you can go on. And the biggest thing about being a realtor is subscribing to the code of ethics, the realtor code of ethics. The thing about it is, if you break the realtor code of ethics handful of times, you keep breaking it over and over and over again, you get your wrist slapped, you have to do some remedial training, you get some fines. That's annoying, but not the end of the world. Well, you would have to do this over and over and over and over again and just be egregious. And eventually they'll say, well, you can't be a realtor anymore. And while that's annoying in a lot of respects, and while some members of the public differentiate and would care about that, others really don't. So you could say, well, I can't be a realtor anymore. That's fine. I'm just going to be a licensee, and I'll keep on doing all this crazy nonsense, keep on getting in trouble, and I'll just be a licensee. No harm, no foul. And this is even better. There's nobody to slap my wrist or give me fines or give me a hard time about it. I just won't be a realtor. I'll be a licensee. Well, right now you have FREC that regulates licensees. So it prevents those people who do not conform and subscribe to the realtor code of ethics. It prevents them from going out and just maliciously taking advantage of the public and committing, gross crimes and, thefts, because FREC can regulate those people and get rid of them. And they can hold hearings and move through complaints to be more efficient than what a criminal court or a civil court might be. So FREC is important in that regard. The legislation had this 389-page amendment filed. Florida Realtors came in and said, hold on a second, this is a horrible idea. You're going to have all kinds of chaos in the industry. The bill passed through initial committee hearing on the 9th, advanced again on Tuesday, and this is April 17th, so last week, Tuesday. If passed, measure would abolish FREC. Actually, it would abolish most boards and commissions under DBPR, leaving uncertainty around who would assume oversight responsibilities. President of Florida Realtors appealed before lawmakers, saying we're talking about the largest financial investment that families and individuals that individuals make in their lives, their homes, the place that they build their wealth, and something that we know is really important to the fabric and fiber of every single community. We understand the intent of the bill and what the state is trying to do with deregulation, but we do truly believe that real estate is one of those that should be preserved. The Florida Real Estate Commission should stand. And completely agree. So FREC oversees licensure discipline actions for 320,000 active and 100,000 inactive professionals. So almost 500,000 people we're talking about here. Real estate activity accounts for $394 billion of the state's overall economy, or about 24%. So FREC, as it stands today, has over 175 years combined experience. Anyways, that gives you an idea of what FREC is doing, right? FREC is preventing chaos, preventing people from being taken advantage of, preventing theft, preventing crime in real estate, and getting rid of bad actors in real estate by revoking licenses. Something that their realtor boards do not have the ability to do. They can only revoke a designation, essentially. So who's behind it? Why on earth would anyone propose getting rid of a commission that regulates licensees who have so much of the public's trust and wealth in their hands? How could this possibly be a good idea? Well, let's go back to the people buying up all the houses from the public, trying to make it impossible for individual citizens and homeowners like you and me from being able to purchase homes. This is your Invitation Homes, your Progress Residential, your First Key Homes. These companies have been acquiring single-family homes across Florida, converting them into rental properties. So with reduced oversight, you can make it easier to acquire properties, and management for these properties will be completely deregulated. So, you can impose unfair fines, double charge tenants, jack rental rates up at the very last minute, the closing table, have insane application fees, not let people see properties before they're forced to sign leases on them. You can have off-market scenarios where you have contracts that a homeowner or a home buyer like you and me enters into, and then these corporations have loopholes in their contracts where they can kick us out of the contract and come and assume it and have a first right of refusal on entire subdivisions and deals they strike with builders. You are putting the public, individual private consumers, individual private homeowners, individual private property owners against big major corporations with no governmental oversight in between to make sure that those corporations are abiding by Florida statute and not taking advantage of the consumer. So you can bet that this is in the best interest of your large companies like Invitation Homes, Progress Residential, and First Key. What can you do about this? Well, you can encourage consumers not to rent homes from these companies, and you can make a choice not to sell your home to these companies. Sell your homes to private home buyers who are going to create homes for themselves instead of selling them to institutions that are going to turn them into rentals and own them forever. Who else benefits from this? Real estate technology platforms like Zillow and Redfin, who want to take consumers out of the marketplace into their own portals, into their own world, and control the entire perception of the deal. They want to give you a real estate licensee that works for them, who will lie to you about how much a home is worth and lie to you about who you should work with on your financing, so they can get you to work with a lender who will lie to you about how much you should be paying for a home and lie to you about what a good rate is and lie to you about what a responsible mortgage payment is, so that they can then funnel you to a title company they own who will lie to you about reasonable title fees and title costs and wind up funneling you through the entire transaction so you ultimately buy a house from a wholesaler who bought it 30 days before you for 50 grand less but hasn't recorded the deed yet. So they can completely screw you as the consumer at every step of the transaction. As the seller, they want to screw you by getting directly to you before any real estate licensee does or before you get any outside information. They want to tell you what the home is worth. They don't want you to ask for other opinions or get good comparable sales data. They just want to lowball you and buy the home from you super, super cheap. And then they want to grab the buyer and keep the buyer in their fold, blindfolded through every step of the process so they can extract as much money as possible and put the buyer into the most expensive house possible with the most profitable loan product and closing costs that they can possibly levy so they can turn around and give that money back to shareholders. So your Zillow, your Redfin, your technology companies, they'll benefit from deregulation. Private equity investment firms like Blackstone, they'll benefit. They can come in and they can do all sorts of creative lease agreements with apartment complexes that they own and even commercial real estate without having any oversight. Real estate development companies can benefit from this, right? Your home builders who don't want to put certain disclosure language, don't want their home sales reps who are licensed to have to disclose certain facts about the property. Maybe the fact that, if you look at our other video, maybe they don't want you to have to disclose the fact that you built your subdivision on a bombing range next to a landfill and a highway underneath a flight path in a flood zone. True story. So, these are the people that stand to benefit. Who doesn't benefit? The consumer. Homeowners, home sellers, home buyers, tenants, private landlords, private property owners get massively screwed here. So contact your state representative immediately and voice opposition for this bill. And again, going back to the top, it's House Bill 1461. Make your voice heard as much as possible. This is a body, I'm all for deregulation. I think there's too much regulation. But this is a body that actually does a lot of good. I've attended these meetings. I've sat in person. I've seen the work that they do. It's critical work for consumers. It's critical work for agents as well. So keep an eye out and definitely take 5 minutes, contact your representative and see if you can help prevent this board from going away. Real quick. So there is a best time to sell a house. And it changes every single year. It varies year to year, but we're coming up into the springtime. And in the springtime, people start thinking about selling. So I thought we would answer the question, when is the best time to sell your house? And you can see right here, this article is from 2023. And they said April 16th to 22nd. You can see this article here is from 2024. And they're saying April 14th through 20th. So, pretty similar. This article right here from 2025, April 13th through 19th, you're probably watching this video saying, well, we're about a week too late. It's April 25th. Well, that's true. The best week based on the research to sell a house would have been April 13th through 19th. But this is a sliding scale, right? It's not black or white. You kind of ease into this advantageous market and ease out of it. But you see some consistency here. Running on 3 years, the data always points to the same kind of peak times to sell a house. And we're going to talk about why that is very briefly. So above average home prices. So home during this week historically reached prices 1.1% higher than the average week throughout the year and are typically 6.7% higher than the start of the year. So that's one thing, right? We want above average prices if we're going to list a house, if we're going to sell a house. So the reason this is, it ultimately goes back to demand and showing frequency. And this is something we have really good visibility on. You can see here as we come through the end of March, you've got some of these valleys that occur. And this one, these are spring break valleys essentially. And what we're looking at here is 2021 through 2025. But what you notice has happened consistently, and I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see a little bit better. We sort of reach a peak here in showing frequency right around the end of March and coming in here into this April period. We reach that plateau and we kind of hang out here with a pretty high showing frequency until we get into the beginning of May. And you can see we already start to slip off a little bit as we go into May. I mean, not a ton, but this right here, Memorial Day weekend, this is a pretty big valley of showing activity. So if you've got a house right now and you're thinking about listing, you probably have a good runway leading all the way up to May 8th. And then we start to see a little bit of a fall off here as we get high school graduation and into school. And then people get back out there. They really get on the wagon May 20th. I mean, it's really a good time. But boy, what a big fall off we see here pretty consistently. I mean, over the last 4 years right there. And then the market kind of kicks back off again. We get back to June 8th. We're back at full strength for buyer activity. But you can see here plus 28%, plus 24%, plus 33%. Versus plus 38, plus 52%, plus 32%. We don't ever really get back to these levels that we're seeing right now in the market in terms of buyer activity. So that's why we have, prices that are better prices because the number of buyers browsing is higher. So you can see historically this week garnered 17.7% more views per listing than the typical week. And they're saying mortgage rates are made higher than 6% for more than 2 years. In response, many buyers stayed out of the market. After 2 years of high rates, it's likely that buyers will trickle into the market this spring. Well, we know that's true. So page views per property on this week versus the average week. So you can see here, we've got peak activity before we start to slide off. Quicker market pace. So if you got fewer homes for sale, which you do during this time period, you've got more showings per house, you're going to have faster sold times. So homes sell more quickly during this week. Historically, homes actively for sale during this week sold 17% or roughly 9 days faster than the average week. So you're selling faster, you're selling for more money, you're getting more views, means you're getting higher quality offers, lower competition from other sellers. This is what we were just talking about. So typical inventory trend would mean 13.2% fewer sellers on the market during this week compared to the average week throughout the year. I mean, that's incredible. Get less buyer competition, more showings. They talk about some pandemic anomalies there. Below average price reductions. I mean, again, we've got fewer homes you're competing with. You've got more buyers in the market. You've got more showings occurring. So price reductions tend to peak in the fall as sellers left on the market after the summer rush to attract attention. During the best week, roughly 20.9% fewer homes have had a price reduction than the average week of the year. So translates to a 0.7 percentage point lower price reduced share compared to the average week of the year. Economic uncertainty and shifting market dynamics. So this goes just to give some character to what we're seeing specifically in the market right now. And obviously we've got the tariffs going on. We've got the interest rate movement as a result of that. We've got the inflation stuff we're trying to work through. But ultimately, they're saying April 13, 19, best week for sellers. Look, that's true. You can see here, we're looking at buyer activity. There's lots of good weeks ahead. Try and avoid listing that Memorial Day weekend if you can. Not a great time to be coming on the market. And then same thing, July 4th. I mean, this is kind of common sense, but what's not common sense is how drastic it can be because you'll hear sellers say things like, well, look, not everybody's traveling. I mean, dang, this is a huge fall off. You got, and let's look at 2024, a plus 3.0% over baseline on July 5th. So plus 0.30 to plus 26.0 just 9 days later. So 20% more, 23% more buyers in the marketplace in just a 9-day swing, more showings occurring. So, just a good heads up. There's also a best time to buy, right? So there's a best time to sell. We see consistently here, April 13th through 19th, April 14th through 20th, April 16th through 22nd. Conversely, maybe you're a home buyer and you're not in a hurry. You want to be a little bit more strategic. Well, the best time to buy is the worst time to sell. So take the calendar and basically draw a line across 6 months. And for all the same reasons, the best time to buy tends to be there around end of September, early October. And you'll see that year over year. And it's for all the same reasons. There's fewer buyers you're competing with. There's more homes sitting on the market. Homes tend to have larger price reductions and more price reductions. So it's all the same reasons that it's best to list in April, that it's best to buy when you get there into September, October. So if you have any more questions on timing the market, let me know. There's a lot of headline news out there. Oh my gosh, the market is terrible. The sky is falling. I mean, you don't even have to search. There's so many articles about what's going on in the market and how the market is shifting and changing. And I just want to show you This is a Central Florida 4 county market that I put together. It's just a good vanilla look at what's happening across Central Florida. I don't include Polk County here. I don't include the Ocala markets here. I don't include New Smyrna Beach. I don't include Brevard County. But look, you've got Orange, Seminole, Lake Osceola. This is very representative of our broader market. And what you can see here, 5.2 months supply of inventory. Uh, and you can see spread out across different price ranges. The median price ranges have substantially less inventory. Very healthy activity here in the 500 to 600 range, 5.3 months in the 450 to 500 range. Active listings, you've got 14,909 active days on market for the active listings, averaging 97. You got 5,100 that are pending. Pending ratio is a new metric that wasn't really tracked for a lot of years, but it's a very good metric to track. It just is basically as a share of the total active inventory, how much pending inventory is there. And where's 34%? Well, that's very, very healthy on overall range, right? We've seen in tough markets that pending ratio gets down to 15%, 10%. 34% is a very healthy pending ratio. If you look at sold homes over the last 6 months, you've got good absorption here. 17,282 homes sold. The sold homes averaging 66 days on market, absorbing 2,880 homes per month. And this is always a good metric to monitor. Percentage of list price, 97.5% of list price. And one thing that people don't usually track, which they really should be tracking, is this right here. I'm going to slide over so you can see it. Not only the you know final list price to sale price ratio, this 97.5%, you see this talked about a lot. The MLS sort of brings this figure up to the top and makes it very easy for realtors to reference and bring up as a sign of market strength. But this figure right here, original list price to sold price ratio, this is a critical figure. And there's two components to this. How well do agents know how to price properties in the market, right? Because if agents don't have a good pulse on the market, we know the average realtor sells 2 homes a year. If the market shifts, and now you've got realtors listing homes after a market shift that occurred, and let's say in our case, like we had interest rates rise a full percent from September 16th to January 13th. So if you last listed your home, let's say on September 1st, and you don't sell a lot of real estate, and now it's January 20th, and you're listing your second home for the year, my God, you're going to be horribly off on your pricing strategy. So how well are homes being priced as a component of the original list price to sold price ratio? But it's also a function of inventory and buyer demand. So what we're seeing is the original list price, when a seller's putting their home on the market right now, on average, their final sold price represents 94.6% of their original list price. So something that hurts if you're going to get 97.5% of your list price when you sell, but you've had to reduce. What happens is you put a house on the market, let's say 700,000, and you've got solar panels that are really worth $0, but you think they're worth the $50,000 that you're going to wind up paying for it in your lease and with your initial payment. And then let's say you put in a massive man cave that is super unique to you, but not really able to be used by broad members of the public, or you put in a huge garage, really unique features, and you price all those into your home. So you've got your $700,000 price out there, but your house is really worth $615,000, but you're indignant. You're going to get your $700,000. Well, you're reducing. You drop your price $100,000, and the buyer comes in the door 90 days later, 100 days later, and says, well, hey, I'll give you 97.5% of your list price. And the seller goes, well, screw you. I've already reduced to $100,000. Well, it's too bad. A buyer's still going to walk in the door expecting to buy a house that's been on the market for 100 days for about 97.5% of the list price. So overpricing, just hits you twice, right? You get a lower percentage of a lower price when you overprice a home. So something to avoid. Looking at average prices, 563 and 534 active versus pending. So it gives you a little bit of a look at what's going on out there in the marketplace. We're not seeing huge, massive amounts of inventory out there really across any of the price ranges, right? Even the lower price ranges, you've got some of this is condo inventory, like low end condo inventory that's sitting a little bit with some of the Surfside collapse stuff. So you're seeing some higher levels in there as that stuff works its way through, and the legislature's kind of amending some of that legislation that caused these condo fees to go from $400 a month to $1,200 and $1,600 a month. So we'll see that get absorbed again as we move throughout the year. But if you look at some of the single family home stuff here, 450,000. This is our median sale price. You got 4.3 months. You got low inventory there. Looking at 500 to 600,000, only 5 months of inventory, and even when you get to 600,000 plus and on up, even to 900 to a million, 5.7. These are your trade up buyers who, these people don't really need to move from their house that they bought for 450 3.5 years ago or 5 years ago. They don't need to move into an $800,000 house or $1 million house. It's just it would be nice to. But you're still not seeing inventory growth there. Still have really good inventory absorption, still getting good percentage of list price, still have good number of sales per month. You can really see there's strong demand, 179, 108 sales in the 600 to 800 range. But nothing in here that looks scary, nothing in here that sky is falling. This is a very real time look. This is daily pulled from the MLS. And it's over a short period, right? This is a 6 month run. So you're not looking like way back in history or averaging out over a lot of time. Market's doing just fine. One of the reasons that we're seeing the market do just fine is obviously that's going to be a function of the interest rate environment and what we're seeing with interest rates. So when we head over and look at seeing interest rates, and real quick before we jump to rates, I pulled this up, consumer price index for all urban consumers, rent of primary residence in US city. So the reason that we're seeing home sales be so resilient across all categories and across all home types is look at what's happening with rents. CPI on rents, like you've got no choice. If you don't own a home right now, you have no choice. These companies, again, the same criminals that are behind the legislation to disband FREC, this is their activity right here, pushing rents at a faster pace than we've ever seen before. Renewals up 6% year over year. If you want to stay in your home, they're going to penalize you and raise your rent 6% on average. That was the data for 2024. 4% for new rents month over month. So somebody moves out, they turn around and release it. They release it for 4%. So they're punishing their tenants that want to stay in their home and don't want to move by jacking the rents up 50% higher on them than they are on new leases. This is what's pushing people into home purchases, even though they don't know if they're going to be in their job that long. They don't really want to pay these rates. These companies will stop at nothing. They will continue, the apartment complexes and now these large companies, the hedge funds, are going to continue to push rents. So this is what stabilizes houses. This is what's keeping home prices up in the face of, no matter what kind of rates you see. But what we're going to talk about is rates really aren't that bad at all, right? We're looking right here at a 3-month picture, and you can see where we were. This is the 30-year uniform mortgage-backed security, 5.5% coupon. And this is the bond price that we're seeing. And we've got really not much change at all when we go back over a 3-month period. If we get a little bit closer up, we've seen big swings, right? So we saw tariff announcements, big fears, China and Japan, most likely, it's impossible to track, but China and Japan most likely dumping all their bonds and driving the price down. So driving the rates of return really, really high. That pushed mortgage rates up. And then we see some pullback. There's a cost in the currency to doing this, a real cost. And you can only play that game for so long. Insurance companies and hedge funds and pensions, they all need to buy and hold these mortgage-backed securities to get steady long-term returns. So we're seeing some prices return to normal. There's been a lot of really good inflation news that's come out the last 2 weeks that's assisting with this, right? Because we know that mortgage rates always follow inflation. So as we see the price of these rise, we're seeing the rates of return fall. So we're seeing inflation fall as we see these prices rise here. There's not really going to be a lot next week that is going to move the interest rate very much. You've got on Friday the non-farm payrolls and unemployment data that's coming out. So if you're shopping for a home right now or you're thinking about refinancing, you don't have to go into freak out mode. You probably have a nice 5-6 day time period where you can sort of evaluate your options, price out different loans, look at different mortgage lenders without having to see any sort of the crazy volatility like we saw just here from, if you look at April 2nd to April 11th in that 9-day period, or even from April 4th to 11th in a 1-week period, you saw rates go from 6.6 to 7.07, essentially 7.1. I mean, mortgage rates moving 0.5% higher in a 7-day period. That's insane. But going from April 11th to now April 25th, the next 2-week period, we see a runoff and a return back to 6.84. So down 1/3% in the following 2-week period, and even a little bit lower today, which isn't going to be reflected yet in this chart. And then I like to, this is that January 13th date we talked about before, and I like it as a good reference date because it just gives us an idea like, what is the direction of rates here? Where are we moving? And you can see we had a really strong downward movement in rates from 7.26 all the way down to 6.60. Now we're from 7.26 down to 6.84. Still on a nice downward trend for mortgage rates, and the inflation data that's been coming out the last 2 weeks, it seems like that's probably going to continue, especially if the trade war continues to de-escalate. And not all mortgage rates are created equal. So you can see here, this is a benchmark for 30-year conforming loan rate, and it says 6.76%. But let's say you put a little bit more money down and your loan to value is less than 80%, and your FICO score is greater than 740. You're getting a little bit better rate there, 6.70%. FICO score 720 to 739, you're kind of right there. FICO score 700 to 719, you're still squeaking in just barely below the benchmark. And then when you get to the 680 range, you can see 680 to 699. If people say, well, what does my credit need to be to get the best interest rate? This index, this really shows you, right? Like, what a difference if we take away all these and we say, like, what if my score is a 680 and I could get it to a 700? What might that do for me? That's 0.2%. That's equal to 2% in price. So if you can make that change, get that score up, pay off that debt, then that's where you're really starting to see a big difference. And then below 680, not really seeing that much of a difference. So 700, kind of the magic number there. And then you compare somebody that's like, let's say putting 21% down, they've got a FICO score greater than 740, and someone who's putting, let's say, 5% down, and they've got a score there in the 680s. Now you're getting even more of a spread, 6.91 to 6.70. So again, that down payment is important if you can get to that 20% mark, but that FICO score, keeping it above 700, also a big benefit. One thing that's nice, this FHA rate, way better still. FHA way better than the 30-year conforming. So 6.5% for FHA versus 6.76. So, that's a full 0.25%. And then VA, still super competitive. VA even lower, so 6.438. So all the veterans getting some of the benefit that they deserve there, and the interest rates finally. So that's your interest rate picture. If we want to look real quick at what's going on in the property management world, the landlord world, even the homeowner world, 2025 Remodeling Impact Report is out, performed by the National Association of Realtors. And this is kind of a cool report. It's not as data heavy as like the profile of buyers and sellers and some of the economic reports that they do. So they've got this joy score, which basically looked at homeowners who took on projects and said, out of the projects that you did or you have done in the past year, which ones did you get the most enjoyment out of, the best use out of? And you can see adding on a primary bedroom suite costs about $150,000. It's not cheap, but kitchen upgrade, much more cost effective. New roof. This is just an anxiety thing and an insurance thing, right? Like that's the best bang for your buck. A new roof on average is going to cost about $20,000. Kitchen upgrade is going to be closer to $30,000. Adding a bedroom suite, $150,000. Other high scores: bathroom renos, painting one room, like just one room makeover, 9.3, new wood flooring, 9.1, and on and on. Top cost recovery, right? So if you're a landlord, or even if you're a seller, or even if you're a homeowner and you're thinking, hey, I might only be in this house for another 2-3 years, I want to do some upgrades, but I don't want to overinvest, and I want to be smart with how I'm spending my money. This is where you want to be putting your money. So new steel front door. We see this in Remodeling Magazine. Remodeling Magazine has a really good, they call it a return on, it's not return on investment, but they do Remodeling Magazine does a good survey from contractors on what contractors think as far as cost to ROI you get. This is a realtor study on the same thing. And my guess is if you're talking about what is the cost of a project, go to your contractor. They're going to have a way better idea on that. If you talk about what's the ROI on that cost, you want to be talking to a realtor about that. And so you see in both of these surveys, what I'm getting at is front door, front entryway, front porch, front patio work, makeovers, remodels have really, really high ROI. And since we can't do basement conversions or convert unfinished basement space into living space in Florida, that's actually the highest. Front entryway remodels and makeovers is the highest ROI project you can do consistently. Closet renovations, creeping up the list. That's getting cheaper to do and becoming more important as people stay in their homes longer, get more stuff. Again, new front door, new steel front door, new fiberglass front door, vinyl windows, 74% ROI. You're getting, not only your utility bills down there, you're getting, if you can get your wind mitigation score higher and you replace all your windows and doors, you're getting your insurance costs down, your utility bill down. So really good ROI on windows, even for resale. There's that basement conversion, attic conversion stuff doesn't really play. Kitchen remodel, 60% ROI, whether it's a major or a minor. Bathroom additions, primary suites, it's hard to get is all that money out of this. It's just such a big, expensive project. Top remodeling projects realtors recommend sellers do before selling. Painting. This is a water intrusion. This is a mold, mildew. This is an aesthetic thing. Like, it just makes good sense to have fresh paint on the house. It's very cost effective. Painting certain interior rooms, if some are certainly dingy or have odd colors. And then new roofing. This is just the insurance piece. Like, you can't even close on a home in Florida right now if you don't have a roof that's in good shape. So that's why you're seeing that creep up. And then kitchen upgrade, the most popular thing buyers want to see. Last 2 years, increased demand for kitchens and roofs. Obviously, again, speaking to where we're spending most of our time in insurance. Primary reason for completing the project last year: upgrading worn out services and improving efficiency. Impact on affordability on decision to remodel. Says pretty much not at all. People are just doing this because they want a nicer home. This was kind of interesting. How are people paying for this stuff? Home equity, loan, or line of credit? Only thing to be careful here is these home equity line of credits are variable rates of interest. So, that payment, if you're not planning to pay it off very soon and you borrow a lot of money on this, that payment can jump up on you pretty rapidly and get out of hand. So credit card, again, look, this is great if you're doing the Home Depot introductory 0% deal. Fantastic option there. Savings, going to be your best case scenario, obviously. And who did the work? Most people hiring professionals. Some people doing it all themselves. And then how long did it take? So this report, you can access this report as a consumer for free if you go to National Association of Realtors and look at their research page. And they've got some other reports that are actually really interesting. Lots of economic reports on there, stuff for home buyers, stuff for home sellers, all across the board. If you're going to be in the market, if you're a real estate agent or a real estate practitioner or a property manager, this is a no-brainer. You've got to be familiar with this stuff. This is the job that you're in. But if you're a consumer and you're just temporarily in the market and you're trying to figure out, hey, Am I being lied to by a real estate agent or a lender, or is what's on the news actually what's happening in the marketplace? National Association of Realtors reports are a great place to go for factual, real data on what's taking place. Takeaway from this video, please contact your representative and let your voice be heard about the importance of maintaining a governmental regulatory and oversight body on real estate practitioners to keep corporations and to keep criminals from taking advantage of home buyers and tenants and homeowners when they go out to make a complicated, high value transaction that on average they only do once every 7 to 15 years. This is critical to protecting the public in the state of Florida. So if you have 5 minutes to spare, look up who your representative is. I'm going to put a link below if you're watching this on YouTube, so you can just go click, look up your representative, and send them a notice right there. If you have any questions about real estate, whether it is renting out a property and getting professional management, whether it is purchasing or selling a home, or whether you want to refinance or get pre-approved to purchase a new home, reach out to me. I'm Don Harkins. You can find us at Don Harkins Realty or 321-377-0341. This was the Don Harkins Real Estate Show. You can like and subscribe on YouTube. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify Podcasts if you're in the car. So thank you for watching and have a great week.